across the UK and the world, online via your PC or smart device. This is LISW Radio, the voice of good shipping debate.
Good morning, it's Wednesday, September the 17th, and welcome to LISW Breakfast Radio. My name is Sean Maloney, and it is the third day of London International Shipping Week. And we've got a busy show ahead of us today. As I said, my name is Sean Maloney. I'm co-founder of LISW and delighted to be presenting the radio show today. We've got the headline conference going on at the IMO, as we all know, and we'll be speaking very shortly to Michael Parker, who's going to be moderating today's event. He's from the Citigroup, as you know, and also Josh Standwick, CEO of Maritime London, who has been chairman of the LISW25 Conference Working Group for the last 2 years. We also have an interview later on with the chairs of the subgroups of our very exciting Innovation and Technology Working Group. And this is born out about a year or so ago with the need for the industry to deliver, to push forward deliverables into government and into the industry as a whole on how we can embrace innovation, AI and digitalization, etc. So that's a good chat. We'll also be looking at the whole issue of geopolitics in a conversation with two of London's leading law firms, as well as catching up with the Port of London CEO Robin Mortimer, and also Gareth Evans, who is a CEO at the UK Major Ports Group, looking at the whole issue of the growth of UK ports. And then finally in today's show, we tackle the whole issue of the crew conundrum, looking at recruitment of seafarers and also the training of them, something that's very, very important to all of us in the industry. Today, as we all know, is the day of the headline conference for LISW25. At the last count, we are full up. A lot of people coming from all around the world. So the shipping leaders in the audience, as well as on the stage and in the various sessions. Delighted to have in the studio today Michael Parker, who's part of the LISW25 Board of Advisors, but also Chairman Global Shipping, Logistics and Offshore at Citi. But more importantly, he'll be moderating today's conference. And I also have Josh Standwick, who CEO of Maritime London, who has done an amazing, sterling job again for LISW25, overseeing and looking after the LISW25 Conference Working Group. Gentlemen, good morning to you. Nice to see you. Can we start? Let me bring you in, Josh. Just before we go into the sort of sessions, and I want to bring Michael's comments on that. How tough a job has it been chairing this working group? Because it's not an easy task, is it?
Well, I think the LISW represented coin a phrase, unique challenge and opportunity. We have a unique venue in terms of the IMO plenary hall, but it does seat 800 people, I believe, and they come from a wide cross-section of what is a very rich maritime community. And when we think about the curation of the conference, we have to deliver an agenda which has something for everyone, whilst at the same time is interesting and engaging. And, you know, our clear objective is to try and ensure that the attendees of the conference come out after having their views challenged and hopefully learning something new about this great industry that we work in.
Now, the title, The Management of Paradox in Global Shipping, there's a lot happening in global shipping at the moment, and it's fast moving. What do you hope is going to come out of the conference today? Before we go into the particular areas, what do you hope is going to come? Because, as I said, you've either got the whole issue to do with geopolitics, you've got the digitalization, AI, innovation, decarbonisation, a lot of issues there. What do you hope are going to be the takeaways?
I think the conference, the overall objective of the conference, Sean, is to explore a tension that we are all aware of within global shipping and, of course, the wider economy, in that there is this tension that exists between industry which is dependent on free and liberal trade and the increased exposure both to national and supranational foreign policy, but also an increasingly contested maritime security environment. And that's very much what the first session will explore in more detail. We will then go on to look at the decarbonisation and transition of the global shipping industry in the context of the geopolitical world that we're working through at the moment. And I suppose emphasise the importance of an IMO-led orderly transition when it comes to decarbonising the sector and the consequences of not having one. And then in the last session, I think we will go into greater detail about, I think, we've seen an acceleration of digitization within the market, largely as a consequence of the pandemic. Whether the geopolitical environment that we're working through at the moment will act as an accelerator to that digital transition or as a barrier. And we'll explore that in more detail in the third session.
Michael, coming on to you. Tough job ahead for you today, moderating this amazing conference. But you've also got some good session moderators as well, haven't you, at your disposal?
Yes. Well, look, it's an honor, Sean, to have been asked to chair the conference. But as you say, the three moderators, I don't want to disparage any previous moderators at previous LISW conferences, but I think in having one of the most popular former shipping ministers in Nusrat Ghani moderated the key macro political session that follows the opening speeches, and then having two London-based leading shipping journalists in Richard Mead and Julian Bray, I think we are very, very fortunate. And I think it will lead to very high quality discussion. With their different styles, they will bring out the best of the panelists. And I don't think they'll shy away from any of the difficult issues. And I was reflecting on conference of 2 years ago, and it seems some way away, though some things seem closer than 2 years. But actually, as you were saying at the very beginning, I mean, the world is in a very different place. We live in a world coming out of COVID 2 years ago. We knew that we'd have to pay for that in some way. But the disruption through the continuation of the war in Ukraine, the new US administration's policies on trade and on shipping, there are so many things that have changed since the last conference. And that is challenging because we also know that things can change tomorrow. There's a lot of volatility and uncertainty in the global system. And I think fundamentally, we're in the building in which in a few weeks' time, the 176 nation states of the IMO have some key decisions to follow up on what they did in April. And that will determine many, many of the decisions that people in the industry, from ship owners, everyone, frankly, in the whole maritime value chain, is going to be making decisions depending upon the outcome of the second part of the MEPC meeting. So I think in one sense, this is probably, from a timing perspective, the most important London International Shipping Week conference. In a different respect, one has to question whether, London as a shipping hub faces, challenges which it hasn't faced before in terms of the number of people leaving the country who are associated with the shipping industry and the UK economy, if you like, in a broader sense. So we're in the center of the global regulators building of the industry, and we're in the city, London, that is in the title of the week's events and the conference. And so there are those global challenges, and I think there are the local challenges that the UK faces in the context of shipping. What I should say is, from the meetings that I've attended yesterday and on Monday, London International Shipping Week is alive and well. Sadly, there are far too many good events where events clash and one can only be in one place at a time. But it's very impressive, and your organization has done, again, a fantastic job at getting everyone organized to get this week underway very successfully. And hopefully everyone will show up today, whether they're a speaker, moderator, or delegate, and make this conference what it always is, which is the centerpiece of this week.
I mean, I totally agree with you, Michael. And, thanking the team in general, the shipping innovation, but in particular Lucy Llewellyn-Jones, who, helping to bring this conference together, working with Joss and yourself. So, Lucy always does a great job. The interesting thing, as you say, you've got big issues going on in shipping with issues like decarbonisation, the whole issues of geopolitics. And, you've got, even in your first session, you've got Arsenio Domingo, Secretary General of the IMO there. You've also got the first Sea Lord, General Sir Gwyn Jenkins, tackling those issues. And then you've got the new shipping minister, Keir Mather, who's new to maritime, new to ministerial position, and actually relatively new to politics over the last 2 to 3 years. And then sort of encapsulate those three areas there, the big areas. And I suppose the tough job that you've got is actually bringing sense into all of those while you give them the certain amount of attention they deserve, but also try to put it into an overall picture as well.
Well, we'll see. We'll see whether I get the opportunity to ask them any probing questions or not. We'll see later this morning. I think I would say a couple of things. The Secretary General of the IMO is a formidable person and a great speaker, but he does make it plain he is there to represent 176 nations of the IMO. He's not the decision maker. And he will be very diplomatic. He will be very careful. But we're also lucky to have him on the key panel, or one of the two sort of later panels that Richard Mead will moderate. So we'll get a second chance with the Secretary General. But we're in his building, and we're honoured to have him give a keynote. I think in the case of the first Sea Lord, it is very interesting because I read during the last few weeks on vacation, I read the Strategic Defence Review, and it's a very interesting document. It reads very well, but it does make several commitments, which we've seen the Prime Minister and the Defence Secretary make in public. Of course, they all depend upon the economic circumstances. So our ability to make the financial commitments to fund the defence ambition is key, and that's a question I will certainly ask him if he doesn't bring it out in his speech. I think, although we're primarily focused on commercial maritime, it's interesting that British shipyards are winning orders from our Nordic allies to build ships for them, and I think that is good news in the context of British shipbuilding as a whole. And the new shipping minister, I am very much looking forward to meeting him. I think youth is a very good thing. We were all young once, and he's a bit older than William Pitt the Younger was when he became Prime Minister, so he's not the youngest. But actually, I hope he has a very successful political career and he uses his period as shipping minister. And we may be lucky that he remains shipping minister for the rest of this parliament or the rest of this government's term. And he is amenable and approachable and willing to learn. I think being younger than many of us, he will learn. Hopefully he'll learn fast and hopefully he will listen to us. And I think we should not be saying he doesn't know anything, he's too young. Quite the opposite. I think we should be saying this is a real opportunity. We've had good shipping ministers before, and Nusrat clearly been one of the more recent, but I look forward to meeting him and hearing him and all of us being able to engage with him in future.
Funny, Josh, really, if you look at the lineup of speakers, and certainly when I've been sort of following it along, we've been attracting in speakers that we've never been able to attract in before. From UNCTAD, we've got Hashimoto-san, President CEO of Mitsui S.K. Lines, Nicholas Hughes, Media Past President of BIMCO. We've got Professor James Bergeron from NATO, and Jan Dieleman, major charter there with Cargill, and also with the chair of the Global Maritime Forum as well, and Katie Ware of Zodiac, and also ex-UK flag as well. They're going to bring a certain element of quality to the debate today. But what are you hoping, to actually to derive from their participation? It's going to be nice to listen to different viewpoints, isn't it?
I think we've worked really hard this LISW, Sean, to make sure that we have not only a diversity of opinion, but a diversity of expertise on all of the panels. And I think on all of those, given the relevant subject matter, we've achieved that objective. Not only, as you rightly say, do we have some of the biggest cargo interests, some of the biggest ship owners represented across the agenda today, but we also have policymakers, we have political and economic commentators, and we have regulators. And the Secretary General of the IMO being, if you like, the top regulator in maritime, and having him provide a keynote and also be sitting on the second panel discussion is really a great honor. So, look, I think we will have a diversity of views, a diversity of expertise, and I think that will all make for a great conference. What do I think we will get out of it? Well, I'm not entirely sure we want to prejudge what will come out of today's conversations. But having been on a number of briefing calls in the run-up to the conference today, there is one thing I think which comes out loud and clear, and that is for the shipping industry to thrive, we need to have a secure and stable liberal trading order. And there needs to be alignment internationally in regards to what globalization means and the importance of interconnectedness when it comes to the global economy. Whether that be in terms of security, both national security and maritime security, whether that be in the orderly decarbonization transition, as we've already mentioned, or whether that be in terms of economic growth and prosperity, particularly for the developing world. And I think that will be, from a number of the panelists today, one of the key messages that will come from the conference.
Well, gentlemen, thank you very much indeed for your time this morning. So looking forward to the conference ahead, as I know 750 or 800 or so people will be doing later on today. Thank you very much indeed for all the hard work you put in. It's going to be reflected.
Sean, can I just say one thing before we close? The conference this time is going to use Slido for delegates to be able to ask questions. We want that to be done very efficiently so that the moderators are able to choose whether to take questions during the discussion. And this sort of thing will be the first time this has been done. So we're looking for delegates to actively participate through that means that will then enable the session moderators to involve the delegates as much as possible and make it not so much interactive, but make sure that the panels are addressing those questions that the delegates think are important so that it's more of a two-way dialogue.
Oh, no, that's a fair point. And I think when you look at the caliber of people sitting in the audience, you're certainly going to get some good questions and feedback there. Gentlemen, thank you very much. Look forward to seeing you later. And let's have a good day ahead.
Ship.energy, tracking shipping's course to a zero-emissions future. Through incisive news reporting, expert analysis, bunker prices, podcasts, books, conferences and training, all focused on the global marine energy sector. Take a look at Ship.energy. Always impartial, innovative and forward-looking.
LISW Radio with Sean Maloney.
Innovation and digitalization is at the top of the shipping industry's agenda, really moving forward, with a lot of companies now driving in new products, new solutions to drive value to the bottom line. When we set up LISW25, we got together with Inmarsat, and we wanted to sort of set up a special working group that would look at this particular area with a view to come up with a set of deliverables that can be talked about and discussed during LISW25. And I'm very delighted today to have on with me here in the studio Ben Palmer, OBE, who's president of Inmarsat Maritime. I also have Richard Buckley, founder and CEO of 90% of Everything. We got Daniel Leung, who's CEO of CyberOwl. Chris Goldsworthy, who's Chief Executive Officer at MRS, the Institute of Marine Engineering, Science and Technology, and Raoul Harris, outgoing Chief Creative Officer, OTG, and Vice President of Intermanager. Ben, let me come to you first, because you and I many months ago sat down and looked at this whole idea of having a innovation and technology working group. What was behind the idea on that? What was your sort of thought processes in setting it up?
Yeah, hi, Sean. Good to be with you, and the rest of the team. I think we always think about London as a great maritime centre, traditionally because of the trade and the ships, but more recently because of the fantastic capabilities in finance, in law, in insurance, and all of those other key enabling services to which the shipping industry looks to London. It's also, of course, a great centre of innovation and technology. The UK has, for many years, pioneered new ways to deploy technology to extract value and generate improved efficiency and effectiveness across the maritime ecosystem. And I guess we just thought it was about time, Sean, that voice that can bring so much to help ship owners, operators, and managers grapple with the challenges that they're facing. We just thought it was a good time to bring that to the fore and assemble a really rich and diverse set of experts, entrepreneurs, innovators, technologists to shine some light on some of the challenges which the industry is grappling.
Before we go in and have a chat with the chaps here, you particularly wanted to focus in on things like decarbonisation, on the social side as well as cyber security as well. But I mean, is it all about also sort of delivering those or presenting a set of deliverables to governments? We've got a lot of governments coming into LISW this year, but also the industry, because the industry is going to be sitting there. You're going to be speaking at the main conference today, which is being held at the IMO today. You're also presented some findings on Monday at the London Talks over in the Hub. But it is about presenting some findings and some deliverables to the industry and to government.
You're spot on, Sean. I mean, we really wanted to focus on being pragmatic, being practical, and focusing on what works. And we've consciously set out to think about, talk about, and work on things that we're going to do two things. One, sit well and be interesting and attractive to governments as they think about how to grapple with some of the economic, social, and political challenges that they face. Really, we've tried to focus on what will help us to grow, what will help keep our societies safe, and what will enable global trade, and critically get at the existential threat of decarbonisation. And we've also wanted to apply the lens of the seafarer, the people out there on the high seas, day in, day out, who make the maritime world go round. I think our collective experience has been there's an awful lot of conferences which look top down at some of these issues, and we've really wanted to try to find ways to bring a seafaring, practical, if you like, a real world voice to the table as well. And so the work we've been doing, and certainly the events that we've put on during the course of the week to sort of showcase and shine a light on our thinking, have been framed very much with those two themes in mind.
Now, on the seafarer theme, and I'll come into Chris first. You've got your event tomorrow, Thursday, which is combating social isolation. And this is a big, important issue. I mean, the seafarer has come under the spotlight, certainly since COVID, but many, many years beforehand. We're talking about seafarers all the time. How can innovation and technology really sort of assist that, Chris? What's behind your thinking on that?
As the global maritime community that it is, IMREST, I think, is perfectly positioned to support this, because we are 136 years centred in London, and as it's on the doorstep, it's a great opportunity, as Ben very correctly referred to, speaking about what do these innovations, changes, developments, legislative requirements mean to the people that actually have to operate and live them. This is the most condensed period of change I think the maritime sector has ever faced. So we need to be relevant and focused to support people in delivering them. So it's really holding up that looking glass about what does this mean when there's already a shortfall of marine professionals in the sector. How do we safeguard that and make it attractive for the future?
But I think that's the key point, because it's not only dealing with the situation now, it's encouraging the young of tomorrow to come in and choose maritime as a career.
Correct. Very shortly, we're going to have 5 different generations in the workplace, the first time in human history, and they have very different personas, requirements, and expectations. How are we going to meet them all?
Well, I want to come on to Dan, Rahul, and also to Richard. And you've already had your events already on the Monday and the Tuesday. But Richard, let me come on to you first. I mean, breaking the code of silence, and looking at how you handle data and this whole issue of a data dilemma. What's your thinking behind all of that side of it? Because there is a push. Shipping and industry should be collaborating when it comes to data, shouldn't they?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we all know that the industry we work in is deliberately cautious and risk averse. And for good reason, right? It makes sense given the nature of the activities of the industry. But, I think the reality is the legacy tech that served the industry for many decades has served its purpose. And there's now a demand for greater transparency of data. That might be for regulatory purposes, emissions purposes. And, the tech supports that now. So what we wanted to do is discuss, well, where's the blocker? And, most people often refer to comparative industries and often use the airline industry as a good comparison to the shipping industry. But the reality is it's not, because sharing data across the airline industry has been set for many years now as a standard. The challenge in shipping is that actually that data is often seen as a competitive advantage. Owners knowing what cargoes they have on board, when they're due to arrive, charterers knowing what cargoes they need to move. This is the competitive tension that exists in the industry. And what we wanted to discuss was, how do we break down those barriers such that we can share enough data to improve efficiency and meet those regulatory and transparency requirements, but without giving too much away that the relevant parties feel like they're giving away, their crown jewels with regards to the data that gives them a competitive advantage.
Well, one thing also, Richard, before I come on to Rahul and to Dan, is that, shipping is fragmented. You've got a lot of companies out there who are, at the vanguard and the cutting edge of, innovation and technology. You've also got shipping companies that are very content to do things the old-fashioned way. How do you marry the two? How do you square that particular circle when it comes to data?
Yeah, I mean, that's a challenge. We often talk about the lowest common denominator in the industry as being the noon report, which, in 2025 is bemusing that we still rely on something that's manually entered and sent once a day as being the lowest common denominator of data in the industry. There's no easy way around it. What I would say is that technology now, with AIS, with the ability to have access to more data from sensors on board, allows us to start bringing data even from some of those, perhaps as you just described them, technology laggards, does exist. And the ability to start sharing a minimal set of data that can truly improve both the efficiency and transparency that's required from the industry can occur. And it doesn't need to mean that everything that they have today needs to be ripped up and replaced, but you can actually just augment what they have today to provide that type of capability.
Okay, Ra, let me come on to you. The other, key pillar of everybody's attention and concern in shipping is decarbonisation. Everybody's talking about it. There's so many things here that we've got to sort of get involved in. Your session on Tuesday looked at systematic obstacles and scalable solutions to the existing fleet. What are the sort of how can innovation and technology help in all of this whole issue of decarbonisation? What's behind the thinking of your subgroup there?
Well, hi, Sean. Morning, everybody. I think there was no way that decarbonisation wouldn't feature when we started talking about the different subjects that Ben alluded to, because it's quite simply the biggest challenge that we face as a people, I guess, not just as an industry, to try and decarbonise. But I think what we were very keen to do was to kind of look at where we could really add value to the debate, because there's so much talked about around this subject, and there's so many dimensions to it. And I think that, I've been involved in a lot of the discussions around the training aspect, but very often when you start to talk about the overall subject of decarbonisation, the conversation gets quite quickly mired in the whole kind of aspect of, well, we don't know exactly what the fuel of the future is going to be, the infrastructure problems, the ability to scale the fuel and so on. And that can quite often end up being quite a sort of a disempowering discussion for people who are looking to really kind of make starts now. And if we are going to see any progress, of course, people need to be innovating right now and there are huge amounts of things happening. So what we've tried to do with the group, and then the way that manifested in the event, was to try to focus on some of the things just in the here and now that people can be doing that can help us to get to that goal of 2050. And that's looking at the way that we've approached it is to look at three different levers that can get us to decarbonization. One being hardware upgrades. So this is really like technology-based interventions that actually, changes to the ship, the kind of things that are being done with sales and so on. Then looking at operational excellence and things that can be done, how the ship is operated, how it's maintained, how it's navigated through the kinds of things, the decision making and the use of data and stuff, as well as human behavior aspects. And then looking at another aspect, which is the business model innovation, which is really transforming the way in which, for example, contracts are managed, different relationships between people in the whole supply chain can actually contribute there. And importantly, following on the theme that Chris was talking about there, it's looking at that. So each person had to kind of describe each of those levers through the impact that they're going to have, the feasibility of whether they can really be adopted, but then importantly as well, that human dimension. Is it actually workable for seafarers and operators? So that, given the context, in answer to your question, I think that what we've really tried to do is to say it's not enough to look at all these things from a technological innovation point of view. Is how are they actually going to come to bear? What's going to be needed to support them and to actually make them work as solutions, viable solutions to getting us to that really important decarbonization.
Thanks for that. Well, let me bring Dan in now, and CEO of CyberOwl, and your event on Monday, very much behind closed doors with DFT, but generated a huge amount of interest with certainly delegates wanting to come in and what have you. Cybersecurity is a big issue. Is shipping doing enough? Is the maritime sector doing enough as far as this is concerned? What are the sort of key areas that shipping and maritime should be keeping an eye out as far as cyber is concerned?
Hi, Sean. Thanks. Look, I mean, coming from the position of being an advocate for cybersecurity, I'm always going to say shipping is not doing enough. But perhaps a more positive look on it is to say that even if we just compare ourselves to 2 or 3 years ago, shipping has come a long way and actually is continuing to do more to strengthen systems on board ships. I think there's a lot more that we can do. And I think in particular, the safety critical systems, or the systems that are critical to safe navigation, that we are increasingly wanting to connect, digitalize, so that we can feed some of these sort of decarbonization and cost efficiency and effectiveness type of business cases, exposes kind of a wider set of risks. And there's lots of that being done in the sector, and it continues to be. But I think for the event on Monday, what we wanted to do was, I think London has a special place in the world of shipping because it brings together sort of the center of regulation and how that's driving some of the thinking in some of the kind of risk and safety elements, of which cyber is one subset of that. But it's also a center of where a lot of technology and innovation is being developed. But if you then look at access for ship owners and operators to a community of knowledge and a community of information sharing around cyber threats and around cybersecurity best practice, actually we can do a lot more in London to facilitate that, given all the resources that London has and all the expertise that London has. And so taking a more long-term view, we then said, look, the event can work well as a catalyst to create a community, but to also kick off a trusted threat sharing environment so that the people on the ground that are having to defend shipping systems, the networks, and the cybersecurity aspects of it on a day-to-day basis have a community they can tap into that can hack their knowledge, short circuit sort of ideas in terms of best practice, but also get access to sort of real practical thoughts on what works and what doesn't work. And that was all, that was what Monday was all about.
Well, thank you very much, Dan. Thank you, everybody, for your time today. And Ben, we look forward to hearing you later on at the IMO today, which should be good. So, but it's good to see innovation and technology taking a centre stage. But thank you very much for your time today, everybody.
Thanks, Sean.
In a world where clear communication drives progress, we bridge voices, ideas, and opportunities with precision, trust, and clarity. Elaborate Communications, connecting horizons, where every word finds its destination. Visit elaboratecomms.com to find out more.
LISW Radio with Sean Maloney.
Delighted to have in the studio today Paul Dean, partner, global head of shipping at HFW, and George McAris, WFW's global maritime sector head and partner. Gentlemen, hello, good morning to you, and thank you for your time today. Yep, good to see you. Now, Paul, let me come in to you first, really. Geopolitics, there's a lot really to consume there with what's happening with the various wars and the conflicts and the closure of the Suez Canal or the Red Sea as a throughput area or a channel of choice as well because of the attacks there on shipping, but also then with sanctions and with tariffs. A lot for shipping to take on board. What's the impact on shipping, and what should shipping be doing now? Because as I said, there's a lot there to take on board.
Good morning, Sean. Thank you very much again for inviting me to join you. I'm not sure 3 to 4 minutes is enough to answer the broad range of issues that are to be addressed here. So I think I'll just touch on probably 2 or 3 particular issues which are focusing in the minds of our clients. And I think we've already seen highlighted during discussions this week at LISW. I think first and foremost, let's use the word war. War, starting with, I think, with Ukraine. We saw how that impacted on sanctions and the effect that had on our clients in relation to the business that they were able to do and the solutions that they needed to find in order to be able to continue business where they could. But then that moved on, I think, to Israel and the various wars that Israel have been involved with, not just with Palestine, of course, but as well as with Lebanon and latterly with Iran. And the impact that then had in relation to the Houthis and what they were doing in relation to tonnage that was affected by their threats and indeed their actions, the rerouting of the vessels around the Cape. All of these had implications for shipping. And I think the other geopolitical issue that I would probably highlight last but not least is tariffs. The White House has imposed, as we know, many different tariffs at different times or threatened to undertake those tariffs, which has very much led to, I think, what I would call almost minute by minute requests for advice as to what these things mean. How can we address them? How do they affect the contracts that we have? That really is a whistle-stop tour through some of the things that we're seeing from a geopolitical perspective.
George, let me bring you in on the conversation, just really touching on what Paul was saying there. Mention of war, mention of conflict. Suddenly, freight rates go up. We've seen it with the rerouting of ships around the Red Sea, around the Cape of Good Hope. Our ship owners rubbing their hands, but also our lawyers rubbing their hands because there's a lot of extra work, as Paul was saying, minute by minute. A lot of uncertainty out there. What are your thoughts?
Yes and no, Sean. Short answer. I think in the next few months, single-handedly the one issue that will, and there's certainly not one issue, but if we had to pick the one issue that is going to dominate discussions and is going to dominate how the market pans out, will be the tariff wars between China and the US, for the simple reason, if nothing else, that it has created so much uncertainty that certainly its negative impact on the market has been felt across lawyers and across owners and across every other stakeholder in the industry. At the beginning of 2025 and how this year has been panning out. I think as and when the market accustoms itself with the lay of the land and how these tariffs will actually permeate the market in the next few months, I think until then it's very much a case of treading carefully and seeing how opportunities will be created. All the while, obviously, not ignoring the very serious impact that actual conflict has had on the industry, with opportunities and market dislocation that this has created, like with the Red Sea, like with Russia and Ukraine, and so on and so forth.
Looking at the whole issue of the tariffs there, you talk about treading carefully. I mean, the media joke that that the White House is making one decision in the morning and making another decision in the afternoon. Does that then mean that a big industry like shipping then just has to tread carefully in the sense of not making rash decisions because things can change so quickly?
Look, shipping makes the world go round, but shipping also needs to know what needs to go round. And I think the tariffs have an impact on the impact that tariffs have on world trade means that ship owners and ship operators and charterers and obviously their ancillary stakeholders like lawyers, insurers, financiers, and so on, they'll need to know what's the good ship to buy, a good ship to sell, a good ship to finance, a good ship to refinance, and so on and so forth. And I think this is where the uncertainty kicks in, and this is where actually the market slowdown comes into effect.
Paul, coming back to you, I mean, George makes a valid point there about this sort of uncertainty, and you've raised some good points there, George. Really, a whole lot of different aspects there. A ship owner needs to take on board. Does he put a ship on spot? Does he put it on long term? Does he sell it? Does he whatever? There's a lot of aspects there. When a ship owner is trying to come to a decision, he's got to have a legal decision. He's got to know what his implications are. But is he having to go to a whole range of experts to try and help him come to a decision that he would ordinarily have taken very, very quickly in the past?
So I think, first of all, I just wanted to agree with what George was saying initially. If you look back at shipping, not just over our respective careers, but if you look more recently to COVID, because I think COVID really is a good indicator of how shipping is very good at finding solutions. And when we saw, particularly at the outset of COVID, what the industry was doing was parking any potential disagreements between them and between counterparties and really looking at how they could ensure that the supply chain functioned properly. That's, in my view, exactly what's continuing to happen now. In terms of stakeholders looking to be able to plan with certainty, at the moment, I think that's extremely difficult. I think there's an element of risk. I think the clients who approach us for guidance, they want to know what the different options are. Ultimately, it's going to be a commercial decision as to what they choose to do. And indeed, as I think George has highlighted, indeed, Sean, you have as well, things are changing and they will continue to change. Donald Trump is a deals man. And when a deal is done, things have changed. So we need to keep that in the back of our mind. And I think our respected clients are looking for that guidance as well.
And George, just bringing you in finally on this, you mentioned earlier about the whole situation regarding China and the trade with the US. Is this a sort of an issue or a potential issue that we're trying to ignore at the moment because of everything else that's going on? Because personally, I think China is a bigger concern than a lot of what's going on at the moment. What are your thoughts? Is shipping really facing a little bit of a tougher future, depending on what happens with regards to China?
Look, the world and shipping needs the US and it also needs China. Certainly for an international sector like the maritime industry, which is, as I've said on previous occasions, actually is probably the most international, the most global sector in its reach. So it's a question of, and as Paul mentioned earlier, it's a question of how you can balance the uncertainty between two players, so that from our sake and from our client's sake, you can actually navigate through these waters.
Well, we'll no doubt continue the conversation today at the IMO and gauge a lot of sort of reaction to that as well. But gentlemen, thank you very much indeed for your time today. It was a pleasure to talk and probably see you at the IMO later on today. Thank you. The growth is at the heart of the UK government's strategy as far as maritime is concerned. And certainly the UK ports play a crucial role in that, in the way that they're investing for the future. And I'm very delighted to have in the studio today Robin Mortimer, CEO of Port of London Authority, and Gareth Evans, CEO of UK Major Ports Group. Gentlemen, good morning to you. Nice to see you. And
good morning, Sean.
Robin, let me start with you, if I may. It's been an interesting past week or so because we've had a change of minister at the maritime portfolio with Keir Mather coming in. From the port perspective, what's top of your agenda? What do you need to happen for you to realise the sort of growth potential that the ports here in the UK can actually sustain and can drive forward?
Yeah, thanks, Sean. I mean, we're seeing considerable investment across the UK major ports at the moment, and that's obviously encouraging both for port efficiency and productivity, but also for the wider benefits that ports play in their regions. And it's been very good, for example, to see the government continue with the free port policy, which is a really interesting opportunity to use ports to really regenerate local communities. And I can talk a bit about the Thames free port if that's of interest. But for the new minister, I think we'll be saying, look, ports are really important for the UK for so many reasons. Clearly, 95% of goods come in through the port over the sea, and therefore we need to make sure we invest in the infrastructure required to make ports efficient, whether that's surface transport or other related infrastructure. And what we're really keen to work with the government on is how to make the processes smooth and efficient and effective. So we take planning reform. We're really keen to engage with government on that. Really keen to engage with government on issues around the way the regulators operate, because we think that there's real opportunity to improve some of those systems and make investment even easier and more effective.
No, I mean, this government's been in power for a year. I mean, what signs are you getting that the government's on board with all of this?
Yeah, as I say, I think the free ports policy, which the government's very strongly supported, is a good example, actually, of things really happening. And if we take the Thames free port, we've had recently a big announcement of an innovative company coming to locate in the Thames free port, Chinook Hydrogen, which is producing hydrogen from waste wood material, incredibly innovative, British patented system, producing hydrogen for net zero transition, but also creating jobs. And so, that company is a great example of one which is chosen to locate in the free port for the benefits it offers. And what we're really looking to do is to sort of see where you can get synergies between the role of the port as an importer, mainly, certainly in terms of Port of London, and the added value that can happen in the free port in terms of manufacturing, which creates obviously additional jobs and productivity growth for the UK. So there's a good example, I think, of where the government's very clearly behind port growth.
Gareth, let me bring you in on this. I mean, just listening to what Robin's saying there, I mean, are you enthusiastic and optimistic about the future as far as growth of the ports here in the UK are concerned? You look after the UK Major Ports Group as well. In your answer, can you give a bit of an indication on the members that you have within your group, and also maybe the way that you see the future panning out?
Well, I say this a lot, Sean, and thanks for having me on this morning. And I should pay tribute to the outgoing minister, Mike Kane, who did a great job in the year or so that he was a minister. But I think that I'd say the same to the new incoming ministers. There's probably never a more exciting time to be coming into this role and the role of ports in all of this. And as you say, as the major ports group, Peel Ports, ABP, PD Ports, Forth Ports, the PLA, Port of Bristol, Belfast Harbour, even, I won't list them all, but even if you think about all of the things we're doing across the country, I think there's a huge opportunity, as Robin has described there, to align government ambition and the ambition for private investors and key employers around the country to really get things moving. And what's really interesting over the last year or so, and the government does deserve credit for this, and our chairman, Henrik Peterson, who sits on the board with Robin and others, sat on the Industrial Strategy Council, which published Industrial Strategy back in June, and we were very pleased that ports were described as a foundational sector. Now, the next opportunity from here is, rather than just being called foundational, how we define that and what that means in practical terms. And as Robin said, the major ports group, we've got 4 objectives, as Robin touched upon there: planning, abolishing any regulatory drag, making sure we've got the power and grid connections we need, and making sure we've got port connectivity, be it road, rail, or whatever it may be. We make sure they're in the right place to make sure that we're attractive for private investors. And I think that's the bit that, as we look around the world, and great that we've got everyone coming into LISW over the next couple of days, I think the UK has got a great opportunity to catch up and do much, much more. I think, and we think as the board, there's no lack of ambition from the major ports group membership. There's no lack of finance from the major ports group membership, but we have got to make sure when we're talking to our investors, we have got things like planning and the regulatory and licensing and permits all in good shape. Because if you look around the world, many countries are moving quite fast on some of this stuff and making it particularly attractive for investors.
Now, you as you rightly say, you've got maybe 30,000 people or so coming into London this week for London International Shipping Week. You're going to want to talk to sort of key investors as well. What are they going to be saying to you, Geraint, really, and also to Robin as well? What are they going to be saying? Because, as you say, they want ease of planning, they want ease of the regulatory drag, as you say, and what have you, but they want to be able to invest and get a return on that investment. Do they see the UK as a good investment opportunity?
Well, I think the UK will always be an attractive place to invest, partly because of the legal system, partly because of our maritime heritage. But at the same time, in global investors have choices. And I think that's the bit that's really interesting in all of this. So I think bringing the projects that are backable in good time and in a sensible time frame, or what investors are looking for, rather than something that could happen in 15 years or in 20 years' time, I think investors are looking for something that can get going, get constructed, start to generate business, and then they're looking for a 20, 30-year payback. I think that's the bit that's really interesting for international investors.
Robin, can I bring you in on that point about, we're looking at this sort of attraction there for the investors? What are they going to be asking of you, do you think? What will they be wanting to hear?
Well, people obviously are investing. I mean, again, taking the Thames, we've got London Gateway owned by DP World. It's in the process of developing berths 5 and 6. Huge investment in the UK. Forth Ports, owners are also investing. Forth Ports has a planning application for development at Tilbury. So investment is actually absolutely happening. I think it's going back to the points we've sort of been raising, really. I think when we talk to investors, what they want to know is, how easy is it going to be? How long is it going to take? And a lot of the issues really come down to speed and being able to get projects implemented quickly. And obviously, if you have a sort of a year's delay in a process at some point, then that adds a lot of cost. So that's what we're really keen to do, is to really make these things as efficient and as quick as possible.
And I just add to that, Sean, if I could. I mean, the other bit that, and again, we had the Mansion House reception last night, which was an excellent event, and talking to investors there. I think that I have been asked this both before LISW and during LISW. Well, what does foundational mean? And I think that's down to us as the main players in the sector and government to define what we mean by foundational and what that means for an investor. Because if we can't define that, we can't, as Robin says, we can't necessarily make the case to say, well, now you can come because you've got this, and this. So I think it's a really interesting time, but I think that we are getting to the business end of things where we need to show investors that the UK continues to be an attractive place. And as I was in Dubai last week, meeting with Sultan, chairman and CEO of DP World, the ambition for London Gateway is quite incredible. as well as what they're doing around the world in 70 other countries around the world. And the Thames, if you look across the Thames, and Robin knows it intimately, it is hugely impressive what potential there is. But what we're always keen to do at the Major Ports Group is sort out potential into reality, and then really focus on the projects that can become real and are backable and investable. And I think that's the bit that we're trying to work very closely with government partners, and that will be part of the new minister's brief.
Yeah, I mean, really, the final question here, really, with Keir Mather coming in, he's new to shipping, new to maritime. I think if you look at his online portfolio, he's new to all of this, really. He's got a lot of learning to do. What are you going to be asking him to do? Go on. And then, Robin, I'm going to get your thoughts on that to finish.
I think it's always interesting, Sean, in the sort of government conversation, is that ports tend to sit in transport. But my message to ministers in other departments, and my message to the new minister, is get to know your colleagues in DESNES and in DBT and MOD. Our board met last week with the MOD last week to talk about dual use. Has become a big issue in the UK around defence and commercial use applications in ports. This could be really interesting. So I think the bit that the new minister can really do is to sort of talk to his ministerial colleagues across government and have an aligned approach, as I said, on the industrial strategy, on the defence, on the French industrial strategy, which was launched last week as well. I think it's really interesting. And the other bit, which I think the minister will find interesting, is that we see a lot of hype and interest around AI. I actually think that AI will be on ports and shipping, or one of the most interesting areas when it comes to AI over the next 2 or 3 years and 5 years. So I think the minister has lots to get his teeth into. And like I said, as Robin has touched upon, we try to be quite clear about what we're trying to achieve, is that let's make it as attractive as possible to our investors outside the port fence, and then we can get on with the stuff inside the port fence.
Brilliant. Robin, a final word from you on this to the minister?
Yeah, no, thanks, John. I think the first thing I'd say is talk to Mike Cain, his predecessor, and like Geraint did, I'd like to pay tribute to Mike for all his work. But it's obviously really important we get that sort of continuity. And then, as somebody who's also worked in government, adding to what Geraint said, I would sort of cite the importance of homing in on 3 or 4 key things that we can achieve over the next year. So it's potentially a very sort of disparate, diverse agenda. Maritime touches on anything and everything. So you have to choose. And I'd really like to see, 3 or 4 clear priorities that we're all working on together.
Well, I'm looking forward to catching up with both of you today at the main conference. So, but in the meantime, thank you very much indeed for your time this morning, and I hope you have a good rest of LISW.
Good luck with the rest of the show, Sean.
Yeah.
Apart from today's headline conference, there are a whole range of other events that are going on throughout the day today. And one in particular, the Future Leaders Network, being run by Maritime UK. And this is being held over in Hill Dickinson. And this will bring sort of senior leaders and rising talent together for an energising conversation about careers and leadership, etc. So it's a busy day again today. We've also got this evening, we've got the Isle of Man Maritime event over in the London Aquarium. And I think this is the one that sort of really typifies how exciting and London Shipping Week is this time, London International Shipping Week is this year, because they put a LinkedIn post out a couple of days ago that said they were oversubscribed by 500 to their event, which is amazing. So they've done really, really well there in the Isle of Man Maritime.
This is LISW Radio, the voice of good shipping debate.
The whole issue of crewing and the social aspect will feature strongly in LISW this week. And we're now the sort of third day of the week. We've got the headline conference coming up today at the IMO. But crewing always remains at the heart of everything that we do in the shipping industry. We call it the crewing conundrum. We've got to recruit the right people into the industry. The industry is changing. It's got to focus on innovation, digitalization. You've got new fuels coming in. You've got the need for safety. You've got the need for creating careers for people within the industry. It's a big issue. I'm delighted to have in the studio today, we've got Katerina Palla, who's head of marine training at RENA, Classification Society. And we also have Martin White, founder and CEO of the Street Marine Group. And they're going to sort of talk a little bit more about this subject. Katerina, Martin, welcome today. Welcome to the studio. Welcome to the third day of London International Shipping Week.
Thank you, Sean, and thanks for having me on as well. Pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you.
Katerina, thank you. Yeah, and welcome. first off, really, Katharina, let me bring you in on this. I mean, we talk about this whole issue of crewing. We've got to get the right people in, but we've got to make sure that training is there to make sure that the ships are safe. Because if the crew are trained to a certain level and to a high level, it's not just making sure they're trained, but there have to be competency for So when you look at safety at the moment in shipping, what are we talking about? Are you happy with the way that safety is happening in shipping at the moment? Is enough being done on that side of it?
Thank you for the question. I think it's fair to say that shipping is safer now than it's ever been, ever. We've seen huge improvements over the last few decades in safety culture, regulations, and of course the technology. Accidents have reduced significantly, and that's something that as an industry we should be proud of. But at the same time, the landscape is changing really fast. We are introducing alternative fuels, new propulsion system, highly digitalized operations that our seafarers need to be competent on. And with all this new technology and all these new solutions that this technology bring, there is a set of risks that we need to manage. For example, hydrogen and ammonia handling hydrogen and ammonia safely is a completely different challenge compared to traditional fuels. So while the foundation is there and it is strong, the complexity is growing. And here is the thing. No matter how much technology we bring in, the people will remain the center of safety on board. Most incidents still come back to human errors, mistakes, poor communication, fatigue, bad teamwork. So it's not just about equipment and systems, it's about our seafarers being prepared, competent, and able to respond to any unexpected situation that is being raised. So in short, yes, safety is in a good place, but safety is not something static. It's something dynamic and it's evolving. And that means our approach needs to evolve as well. We need to keep investing in people, in training, and supporting a constant learning culture on board and in our companies.
So just touching on that before I bring in Martin, this whole need for training, but the need for training is changing, isn't it, Katharina?
Yes. Yes, it's changing. It's changing a lot. And now it's more important than ever in the shipping industry in the times that have been. Because training is not about meeting compliances and ticking boxes. It's about making sure that people are truly competent and confident to do the job. Regulations can give a framework, but at the end of the day, real safety and efficiency come from how this knowledge is being applied by our people on board on the daily operations. Now, training isn't only about classroom courses and training, e-learnings, asynchronous training. It's about continuous development. And one of the most effective ways to do that, especially on board, is also through mentorship. So training is great, but we need mentorship as part of the training culture. When an experienced officer takes the time to guide a junior officer or a cadet, it builds not just technical skills, but it builds also critical thinking, confidence, and decision-making ability. But one thing that I want to highlight is that mentorship is not just a one-way thing. Reverse mentorship is equally very powerful, where younger seafarers who are often more familiar with all the new digital tools and the new technologies, share that knowledge they have with the senior crew, because this creates a two-way bond and this creates a two-way learning culture on board. It builds respect and team spirit and keeps everybody up to date with all these rapidly changing technologies that we have. Alternative fuels, digitalization, automation. So
Yes. So mentorship is important. Let me bring Martin in. Martin, Katharina was mentioning something there very, very important, looking at this alternative fuels here. You've got ammonia, hydrogen, big issues, methanol, LNG. What are the challenges and opportunities here when it comes to that? Because the whole issue about alternative fuels is the one thing that's certain is all the uncertainty about it, but they need to be trained, don't they?
Yeah, I think that's it. That's broadly covers that, Sean. We're in a period of time here where the shipping industry has really always had one fuel to rule them all, or certainly to rule majority of the world's fleet, and also very similar technology to utilize that particular fuel, albeit advancing over time. I think where the challenge now comes in is we are introducing rapidly, for the first time in history actually, not for a technological advancement and not for an economic benefit, but to really help support and address global climate and the global climate directive that's coming through. And that presents us with different challenges. And you mentioned 4 of the primaries there, which are liquid natural gas, ammonia, methanol, and hydrogen, probably with liquid natural gas coming through first. We're now seeing a large spike and increase in methanol coming through, with also ammonia and hydrogen, which we participated in some of the first trading for in the world for both those fuels. They're very different. It's the first time in history we will expect to power the global fleet so diversely with technology, diversely with the behavior of each of those fuel types and molecules, and at the same time, the potential for a seafarer to go across multiple different technologies and multiple different fuel types with multiple different hazards. There's a reason these fuels are classified under the IGF code as low flashpoint fuels. They've all got their own unique enhanced risk. And that presents a huge challenge when it comes to training and training effectively, because you're not training on a baseline any longer. You're training on different types of risk across different types of fuel technologies. And the one seafarer could, like I said, move between them. So it's really understanding and taking a new approach to that and how you actually really prepare the seafarer of the future. And that's what we're in just now, is that transition period.
But when you look at, I mean, you raised a valid point there, and it reminds me of a friend of mine's a pilot for Qatar Airways. And I said, what's it like? He said, well, I used to fly Boeing, but now I fly Airbus, and they're completely different apart from the fact that they both have wings. So, I had to have a completely new training. Now, when you've got seafarers that are focused in on LNG and then, they've been put on ships that might have ammonia or hydrogen or methanol, how would you square that circle, Martin? Because you've got not only the seafarer himself or herself that you need to deal with, you need to deal with the industry that is moving at different rates of advancement when it comes to fuels. So you've got to sort of try and encourage them to take up the type of training that they need to be taking up. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, absolutely. It's really the company. Okay, we have the minimum standards, which are the STCW and partly the IGF code, of course, addressing this. But really, for the shipping owner and operator, they've got a huge responsibility to ensure that the systems and technology that they put onto their vessels and the particular way in which they decarbonize via technology, or indeed introducing one of these higher risk fuels, that the crew are ready for it. And unfortunately, for the first time in history, we've not got a huge amount of seafarers in the world with experience already. So that, we talked about inheriting experience from other seafarers. When it comes to these fuels, that's not there often to pass on because it's so new for everybody. And it's so different between all of the fuels as well. So we've lost that little bit of inherited knowledge capability there to pass on. And I think when it comes to the actual shipping companies, certainly what we've seen is a real enhanced look at how they can onboard safely and create that environment for the seafarer beyond the minimum regulations and minimum safety training, as well as looking at their own safety management systems and safety cases and understanding where are the potential additional enhanced risks that they would need to have additional training for. And we're starting to see requests come in, not just for the basic training that creates the certification in order to sail on these vessels, but for real enhanced training, taking a look at real specific areas, and including of course, bunkering, where there's high risk activities there, and of course, emergency response, given the enhanced risks as well.
Well, Martin and Katerina, thank you so much indeed for your time today. It's been, we could be talking on for hours about this very, very important and fascinating subject, but thank you very much for your time. And it's going to be a subject that's going to come under a lot of scrutiny this week in LISW. But we'll no doubt see you during the week as well. But thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Sean, for having me on.
Yeah, thank you too. It was great.
LISW Radio with Sean Maloney.
Well, I just wanted to say a big thank you to all of our guests for the last 3 days on LISW Breakfast Radio. It's been a lot of fun putting together some amazing people with amazing foresight and ideas and comments and what have you, and very, very grateful to them for this. It's a big job putting all of this together, but a lot of fun without a doubt. And but I'd also like to thank our producers, Image Sound, who've done a tremendous job in actually coming together and helping to do this. We couldn't do without them with Glenn and Ben. So Image Sound Studio is great. If you want anything like this put together, you need to get in touch with them. They're absolutely superb. They're all the way along. But I'd like to thank you, the listener, as well. I think we can't do all of this without you. LISW25 this year is amazing. We've got more people here. We've got more events. We've got more involvement right the way across. 50 delegations, I understand, now coming in. It's been amazing. I really hope you have a lovely day today, and also tomorrow. Look forward to the gala dinner tomorrow night over in Battersea Park. But this is me, Sean Maloney, signing off, and I look forward to bumping into you today and tomorrow as well, and Friday. So thank you.